Welcome to Twilight Terror Stories. Twilight is not just the end of day, it's the beginning of something else. A time when the shadows stretch and fear takes its first breath. You've stepped into that moment now, and the stories are waiting. Let them find you. The dashboard icon, a stark silhouette seated beside me, flared into life. 2:47 a.m., Tuesday. Outside, Chicago wept a cold, persistent October drizzle. I glanced right instinctively, then checked the rear view. Nothing but worn upholstery and the city's smeared lights reflecting back. Yet the car insisted someone, precisely 143 pounds of someone, occupied the passenger seat. Night driving for the rideshare giants downtown throws the city's chaos at you. 8 years navigating this concrete labyrinth, I've ferried the drunk, the desperate, the delirious. Couples mid-implosion, students chanting fight songs, souls unraveling thread by thread in my back seat. This, however, felt different. Alien. The app pinged. A pickup for Eliza Thorne, 1894. Tapping the profile yielded only a digital shrug. User not found. It began on Michigan Avenue, under the stony gaze of the old water tower. The rain wasn't just falling, it was seeping, a viscid chill working its way into the marrow. My last fare had vanished into the night, and home beckoned. Then, the chime. A near-perfect 4.97 rating, pickup coordinates exactly where my tires kissed the curb. 5 minutes ticked by. Engine humming low, wipers tracing rhythmic arcs across the glass. No one emerged from the damp gloom. I reached for the cancel button, weary, ready for my own bed. That's when the seat sensor ignited. A glitch, I thought first. These vehicles endure relentless abuse. Systems fray. I pressed my hand onto the passenger cushion. It yielded, compressing unnaturally, as if against unseen substance. When I withdrew my hand, the indentation lingered, a fleeting phantom, before the fabric slowly breathed back to shape. "Anyone there?" The words felt absurdly loud in the enclosed space. A sudden, sharp cold permeated the cabin, dropping the temperature by degrees. My own breath plumed, a visible ghost. I fumbled for my phone, determined to kill the ride. The app refused. Each jab at cancel ride simply refreshed the screen, the active trip stubbornly persisting. Navigation, unbidden, charted a course toward Lincoln Park. Sanity screamed, "Get out, lock the doors, go home." But alimony gnaws and tuition looms large, need trumped reason. And beneath the pragmatism, a sliver of perverse curiosity lodged itself. 8 years, thousands of rides, never this, never anything like this. Shifting into drive, I eased away from the curb. That small, insistent icon burned on the dash, a silent accusation. Block after block, my eyes flickered right. Empty seat, invisible weight. 143 pounds of nothing. Northbound on Lakeshore Drive. 3 a.m., the asphalt ribbon nearly deserted. To my right, the vast black expanse of the lake churned invisibly, its waves crashing against the breakwater, a percussive counterpoint to the rain drumming insistently on the roof. The cold deepened. I blasted the heat, a futile gesture against the encroaching chill. My hands trembled on the wheel. I blamed the temperature, not the dread coiling in my gut. The radio dissolved into a crackle of pure static. twisting the dial cycled through an endless hiss of white noise. We veered off Lake Shore onto Fullerton. Here, the streets narrowed, shrouded beneath the skeletal arms of ancient trees. Towering brownstones loomed, silent sentinels from another era. The navigation commanded a halt before a 3-story Victorian, a relic seemingly untouched since the gaslight era. Paint peeled like sunburnt skin, windows were boarded blind, and dead vines clawed possessively up the brickwork. A rusted "No Trespassing" sign hung askew on the wrought iron fence. My phone declared this the destination. End ride? I ventured into the silence. No response. The sensor remained stubbornly lit. Later, digging through property records confirmed the truth. Abandoned since 1894. A fire. The owner, Eliza Thorne, 27, perished within, or vanished. The front door of the derelict house groaned open, revealing not light, but an absolute ink-black void. Simultaneously, the passenger seat sensor clicked off. Warmth rushed back into the car, startlingly normal. I sat, engine idling, wipers still sweeping for a long, unnerving moment. Finally, steeling myself, I checked the back seat. Empty. But nestled on the passenger cushion, where the pressure had been, lay a single pearl button. Small, yellowed with age, the kind sewn onto bridal gowns in the late 19th century. I drove straight home, phoned in sick. The following day was lost in a haze of online archives and library microfilm. Eliza Thorne. The fire. Her body never recovered from the ashes. An old broadsheet mentioned she was last seen climbing into a carriage late one night, clad in her wedding dress. The ceremony was set for the next morning. That spectral ride was 3 weeks ago. I'm back behind the wheel now, necessity overriding fear, though Lincoln Park after midnight is a zone I refuse to enter. Sometimes, when the rain falls just so, that sensor light flickers, a hesitant pulse. The pearl button resides in my glove compartment, a tangible anchor to an impossible memory. Proof, perhaps only to myself. Last night, another request materialized, a different name, yet the same user not found. Error greeted my attempt to view the profile. Pickup, the water tower again. I canceled instantly, logged off. Some fares carry too high a cost. The memory of that empty, weighted seat haunts the edges of my thoughts. 143 pounds of absence. 8 years I've driven these streets, thinking I'd witnessed the full spectrum of human strangeness. I was profoundly mistaken. Deeper research unearthed darker threads. Eliza Thorne wasn't merely a tragic fire victim. Her fiancé faced scrutiny, whispers of foul play, but no charges stuck. Bloodstains found in his carriage, yet no body. The prevailing theory then, he murdered her, used the blaze as a gruesome smokescreen. The Fullerton house wasn't hers. It belonged to him. The fire originated in the basement, where investigators discovered grim evidence, chains bolted to stone, deep scratches gouged into wooden support pillars. He claimed an airtight alibi. Out of town. A week after my encounter, curiosity drew me back to the Fullerton address in broad daylight. Only a vacant lot remained, choked with weeds. City records showed the Victorian demolished in 1975. But I know what stood there in the rain-soaked darkness. Since Eliza, things have shifted. The sensor activates more frequently now, always late, always when I'm alone. The familiar chill descends, the radio surrenders to static, but the weight varies. 160 lbs, 118 lbs, 175 lbs. Different names flash on the screen, tied to different years. Different pickup points, different destinations. Always addresses lead into phantom structures, ghosts of buildings long erased from the city map. Last night, I picked up a historian, a woman immersed in Chicago's past. Casually, I steered the conversation toward 1890s disappearances. Her eyes lit with academic fervor. It was her precise area of research. Dozens, she said, young women vanishing without a trace during that decade, predominantly last seen entering carriages late at night. None ever found. The passenger seat sensor just illuminated again. 136 lbs. The app displays a request. Clara Bellwether, 1891. Outside, the drizzle recommences, insidious, cold. The temperature inside the car plummets. My phone's navigation is already alive, tracing a path toward the old Stockyards district. Logic dictates I go offline, drive home, bolt the door. Yet, these women, decades lost, stories untold, still searching perhaps for someone to find them. The sensor remains lit. A subtle shift in the depression, like someone adjusting their posture. Through the insistent static fuzzing from the speakers, a fragile thread of sound emerges, almost a voice, almost weeping. The navigation waits. I engage the transmission. Some fares, it seems, demand acceptance, regardless of the destination. Pulling away, I risk another glance at the passenger seat, still empty to the eye. But now, something new. Minuscule droplets of moisture bead on the leather upholstery, like tears shed by an invisible presence. The dashboard clock reads 2:47 a.m. Behind me, the city dreams fitfully. Ahead lie streets steeped in shadow, leading toward an unknown I increasingly dread yet feel compelled to approach. Perhaps they need more than transport. Perhaps they need a witness, acknowledgement, proof they existed, mattered, are not forgotten. The navigation directs a left turn, deeper into the skeletal remains of the industrial district. Abandoned factories and warehouses, monuments to a bygone century, loom like sleeping beasts. The rain intensifies, drumming a frantic rhythm. The static coalesces further, syllables forming within the hiss, laced with sorrow. 3:33 a.m. The sensor readout flickers, settles at 139 lbs. Through the electronic snow, a whisper, heartbreakingly clear. Please. We're close now. Ahead, an ancient warehouse materializes through the rain-lashed windshield, the designated endpoint, but something is jarringly wrong. The building looks whole, intact, as it might have stood in 1891. Lights glimmer within its grimy windows. Faint movements flicker behind the glass. Then, abruptly as it began, it ends. The sensor extinguishes. The car's climate normalizes. The radio falls silent. Resting on the passenger seat, another antique pearl button. Beside it, a small, brittle square of yellowed paper. A newspaper clipping I've never encountered. Clara Bellwether, 19, missing. Last seen entering warehouse district late Tuesday night. Reward offered. I sit for a long time, the engine a low thrum, wipers pushing aside the relentless rain. Finally, my hand reaches out, gathers the button, the clipping. They join the growing collection in the glove compartment, fragments of impossible journeys, tangible evidence of spectral passengers. The warehouse ahead has reverted to its derelict state, windows dark, bricks crumbling. Answers might lie within its decaying shell, truths buried beneath layers of time and silence. I should flee, forget. But the knowledge settles, heavy and certain. I won't. Tomorrow night, or the night after, another name will surface. Another weight will settle beside me. Another lost story will seek a voice. For now, reverse gear. Back toward the familiar grid, the tangible world of flesh and blood fares and logical routes. But I carry the buttons, the clippings, the weight of unseen histories. I watch the sensor now, every flicker a potential summons. In this city, darkness holds more than shadows. Not all passengers are visible. Not all destinations are plotted on maps. The rain eases as I near home, though the sense of an unfinished journey lingers. Somewhere, more women wait in the temporal margins, their stories whispering on the night wind. And each night, near that liminal hour of 2:47 a.m., the passenger seat sensor might glow anew. I'll drive, I'll watch, I'll collect their small tokens. Perhaps that's the role I've been assigned. Not merely a driver, but a custodian of echoes. Someone to affirm their presence, their value, their refusal to be erased. One last check in the rear view before turning onto my street. A flicker. A shape in the backseat darkness. The silhouette of a woman in an old-fashioned dress, pearl buttons catching a stray glint of street light. Blink, and she's gone. Empty again. Tomorrow night awaits. The road calls. I'll be out there, waiting for the light, for the name that exists only in memory, ready to learn what became of them, one spectral ride at a time. Because in Chicago, not all ghosts seek to frighten. Some yearn for a ride home. Some crave the telling of their tale. Some simply need to be remembered. The passenger seat sensor just flickered. Time to go back to work. The umbra presiding at my bed's edge the first time felt torn from slumber's fabric. A stillness absolute. A shape against the deep dark. A blink. A vacuum where it stood. Ignorance then was a fragile shield against the dawning terror. Scarcely a lunar cycle had passed since I sought refuge within these walls. A modest one-bedroom nestled in a somnolent city quarter, its rent a whisper, a siren song that should have screamed deceit. Yet, fleeing the wreckage of a fractured heart, I craved sanctuary. The proprietor, Mr. Silas Thorne, conducted the viewing, his gaze adhering a moment too long, his familiarity with the space unnervingly innate, mapping its corners without a glance. Relief, blinding and desperate, eclipsed prudence. The initial weeks unfurled with deceptive placidity. Boxes yielded their contents. A semblance of order arose. Life, I dared to hope, was reassembling itself. Then the subtle dissonances began. A novel, certain to have rested upon the low table, reappeared nestled on its shelf. The milk level in the refrigerator receded inexplicably. My favored ceramic cup migrated to an unfamiliar cupboard. Fraught nerves, the burden of a new position. I rationalized these anomalies as phantoms of a preoccupied mind. Yet the conviction of wrongness coiled tighter. An altered quality sometimes permeated the apartment's atmosphere upon my return, a stale stillness tinged with an unplaceable, faintly acrid odor. And once, drifting on the edge of sleep, the soft susurrus of footfalls in the corridor outside my chamber door, vanishing when I roused myself to investigate the vacant passage. Perhaps 3 weeks had elapsed when I awoke abruptly to an unfamiliar chill. My bedroom window gaped, violating the night, a window I secured religiously, its ground floor vulnerability a constant whisper of caution. The cool draft raised gooseflesh as I rose to fasten it, and there, stark against the worn carpet just within the frame, a muddy imprint, undeniably terrestrial. My pulse became a frantic drum against my ribs. A shadow? A trick of the pre-dawn gloom? No. The truth pressed in, cold and sharp. Someone had trespassed upon my slumbering solitude. The constabulary arrived, their investigation yielding nothing tangible. No fractured lock, no telltale smudges, naught missing. Perhaps, they ventured, I'd forgotten the latch? The footprint. Likely my own careless tracking. I yearned to embrace their mundane explanation, but an unshakable certainty resonated deeper. Sleep became an elusive quarry that night. Each floorboard's lament, each sigh of wind jolted me upright, heart hammering. In one such hyper-vigilant interval, I saw it again, the tenebrous form standing sentinel at my bed's foot, utterly immobile. A strangled gasp escaped me as my fingers scrabbled for the bedside lamp switch. Light flooded the room, revealing only emptiness. Hallucination born of exhaustion and dread? Perhaps. Yet the encounter left me profoundly unnerved. Locks were henceforth obsessively verified, a stout chair wedged beneath my bedroom doorknob, a flimsy barricade against the unseen. Escape beckoned, the prospect of uprooting again, daunting. Instead, a different resolve hardened within me. I acquired a discreet sentinel, a miniature surveillance device masked as a simple digital clock, positioned upon my dresser, its unblinking eye encompassing the chamber's breadth. If intrusion was reality, proof would be my weapon. Several nights yielded only footage of my own restless slumber. Then, the fourth vigil. I returned from the day's demands, the camera's existence momentarily forgotten until evening descended. Retrieving the recording, I watched, and the marrow in my bones turned to ice. The initial frames showed me lost in sleep. Then, time-stamped near the nadir of night, 2:30 a.m., my bedroom door eased inward with spectral quietude. A shape detached itself from the hallway's gloom, Mr. Thorne. He entered with unnerving composure, pausing simply to observe my unconscious form. His inspection commenced, a slow perambulation. He touched my hairbrush, the novel beside my bed. He slid open the wardrobe, his fingers tracing the fabric of my clothes. All the while, I slept, vulnerable, utterly unaware. Minutes stretched into an eternity before he approached the bed itself. Horror constricted my throat as I witnessed him lean down, his visage mere inches from mine, his gaze lingering upon my sleeping face. A timeless moment passed before he withdrew, melting back through the doorway as silently as he had materialized. Nausea churned within me. The profane intrusion, the utter desecration of my sanctuary, it threatened to overwhelm. Beneath the revulsion and the icy tendrils of fear, however, a different heat began to build. Pure, unadulterated fury. The audacity. How often had this clandestine ritual occurred? How many others had endured this silent predation? Instinct screamed to alert the authorities, yet doubt whispered caution. Would they credit this spectral evidence? Might Thorne retaliate? No. More definitive proof was required. I needed to ensnare him, red-handed. Thus, a strategy formed. The following night, I enacted the ritual of retiring, extinguishing the lights, but sleep was a deliberate facade. Every nerve thrummed with anticipation as I lay rigid, listening. Hours bled into one another. Just as doubt began to gnaw, the faint snick of the main door lock echoed through the stillness. My heart vaulted, its frantic rhythm a betraying drumbeat I struggled to quell. Slow, even breaths, measured footfalls neared my chamber. The door groaned open. I waited, sensing his proximity, the shift in the air near the bed. Then, in a single, fluid motion, I surged upright, simultaneously flooding the room with light from the lamp. Thorne stood arrested mid-stride, pinned in the sudden glare like startled prey. A slow, chilling smile unfurled across his features, not of surprise, but of a predator momentarily inconvenienced. "Ah," he murmured, his calm utterly unnerving. "Awake, are we?" My voice, surprisingly level, cut through the tension. "Leave. Now, or I summon the police." A low, disquieting chuckle escaped him. "And report what, precisely? Your landlord exercising his right of entry? Permitted, you know, stipulated in our agreement." My hand darted towards my phone on the nightstand. His reaction was reptilian swiftness. His fingers closed around my wrist, a vice grip radiating pain. "I strongly advise against that," he hissed, the calm fracturing, revealing a menacing undercurrent. "You cannot fathom the lengths I might go to." In that instant, the true depth of his derangement, his potential for violence, struck me with terrifying clarity. Trapped. But defiance flared. My free hand seized the lamp's heavy base. With every ounce of strength I swung. The impact against his skull yielded a sickening crack. He staggered, his grip loosening. No hesitation. I scrambled from the bed, bolted through the living area, fingers fumbling desperately with the deadlock on the front door. Behind me, curses, the unsteady thud of his pursuit drawn nearer. The lock finally gave. I burst into the blessedly empty corridor, launching myself towards the stairwell, taking the steps in near flight, refusing the urge to look back. The 2 blocks to the police station blurred past in a sprint fueled by terror. Gasping, trembling, I recounted the ordeal. This time, they attended. My statement was recorded, the damning footage reviewed on my phone. Officers were dispatched. Silas Thorne was apprehended. It transpired my violation was merely one thread in a larger tapestry of his transgressions. Evidence unearthed in his own dwelling linked him to a pattern of burglaries and obsessive pursuits across the city. He awaits judgment behind bars. Yet tranquility remains a fractured thing. Sometimes, in the deepest hours, the phantom sensation of his gaze snaps me awake. I inhabit a different space now, across town, its windows secured, its curtains perpetually drawn. Some might label this vigilance paranoia. I know it as the hard-won wisdom of survival. The crucial lesson extracted from the shadows. The specters of childhood nightmare lurking beneath beds hold no substance, but monsters walk this earth. They wear familiar faces, offer congenial smiles, present keys to dwellings steeped in cheap rent and suffocating secrets. Illuminating their darkness, exposing their true nature, is the only recourse. It is an act fraught with terror, yet profoundly essential. Neglect allows them to persist in the periphery, watching, waiting. So heed that primal tremor, the intuitive prickle that insists something is fundamentally awry. Trust that inner voice. Dare to flood the darkness with light and confront whatever festers there. For sometimes, only by facing the monsters can we compel them to retreat. A cascade of children's laughter spilled across the sun-drenched park, a sound bright and piercing against the sudden cold knot tightening in my chest. There, an island in the swirling currents of families and festivities, a solitary man, his camera a prosthetic extension of his gaze. The lens, however, ignored the whirling carousel ponies, bypassed the sticky sweet allure of spun sugar, focusing instead intently on the playground. In that instant, a premonition, sharp as broken glass, pricked me. The urge to step forward, an impulse that would soon cast me into a shadowed memory I'd carry for years. It was the 4th, the air thick with the smoke of barbecues and the sugary breath of funnel cakes. Families unfurled like patterned quilts across the grass. I was nestled among them with my sister, Nora, and her children, soaking in a day unburdened by the weight of my work, the endless files of children teetering on precarious edges. A day meant for ease, for the simple joy of patriotic spectacle. Yet, years spent navigating the hidden reefs of childhood vulnerability had sharpened my senses into something perpetually vigilant. At first, I tried to dismiss him. A father, perhaps, chronicling his own child's fleeting summer moments, but his movements were too deliberate, too detached. He drifted from one cluster of children to the next, a satellite orbiting their bright energy, always alone, always at a remove. The camera itself felt wrong, a heavy, professional piece, incongruous with casual holiday snaps. I nudged Nora. "See that man, over by the swings, with the camera?" She squinted, her brow knitting. "Yeah? So?" "I don't know," I murmured, the words hushed beneath the park's cheerful din. "Something feels off. He's been photographing kids for nearly half an hour. No family with him." Nora's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "You don't think—" I gave a grim little nod. "I'm going to talk to him. Stay with the kids." Her hand clamped onto my arm. "Clara, be careful. What if he's—" I offered a smile I hoped looked braver than it felt. "Nora, remember my caseload? I handle difficult people. I'll be fine. Just keep your phone handy." Approaching him, I draped myself in an assumed nonchalance, a cloak of casual friendliness. Mid-40s, nondescript, khakis, a polo shirt. He could have been anyone's uncle, anyone's colleague. "Perfect day for pictures?" I commented, stopping beside him. He jolted, lowering the camera slightly. "Oh, yes. Yes, it is. Getting some wonderful shots of your kids, I bet." I watched his face, searching for the telltale flicker. Something, panic, irritation, flashed across his features before being smoothed over by a practiced smile. "No children of my own," he replied. "Freelance, capturing the holiday spirit, you know." The internal alarm, previously a low hum, now shrieked. "Oh, which publications?" A hesitation, barely a skipped beat, but palpable. Various local ones, you wouldn't know them. Time to press. You know, as a mother myself, I lied easily. I'd find it unsettling. A stranger taking pictures of children without asking. Maybe stick to the flags and the food stalls. The transformation was instantaneous. The affable mask dissolved, revealing something glacial beneath. "Listen, lady." His voice dropped, roughened with menace. "Who do you think you are? It's a public park. I can photograph whatever I want." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I held my ground. "Actually, no. Not minors without parental consent. I need you to leave now, or I'm calling the police." For a breath, I thought he might yield. Then his hand shot out, fingers locking around my wrist like iron bands. "You're not calling anyone," he snarled. The world fractured into panicked motion, a kaleidoscope of flailing limbs and grunts. Instinct, honed by self-defense training, took over. I twisted sharply, breaking his grip. He lunged, the heavy camera swinging like a wrecking ball. Air hissed past my ear as I ducked. Shouts erupted around us. Children screamed. Through the chaos, I glimpsed Nora, phone pressed to her ear, her face pale. He must have felt the closing net of attention. He pivoted, aiming to flee, but a cold certainty had crystallized within me. He couldn't vanish, not with what I now suspected. I launched myself forward, tackling him low, sending us both sprawling onto the dusty earth. We grappled, a desperate tangle of limbs, his strength fueled by panic, mine by a fierce, protective rage, the righteous anger of someone who'd witnessed the devastation predators like him wrought. Then the blessed, piercing wail of sirens sliced through the park's noise. His struggles intensified, a fist connected solidly with my ribs, stealing my breath. But it was futile. Firm hands hauled him off me. Through watering eyes, I saw two officers wrestling his arms behind his back, the metallic click of handcuffs sharp and final. As I pushed myself upright, pain lancing through my side, my gaze fell upon his camera, abandoned in the grass. The screen, though cracked, glowed faintly. What flickered there turned the summer day to ice. Not just park scenes, other images steeped in shadow and violation. Children arranged in ways that screamed wrongness, their innocence distorted into something grotesque. Bile rose in my throat. I had to wrench my eyes away. The ensuing hours were a disorienting montage of police reports, paramedics, hushed questions. The man, they discovered, was a phantom trailed by warrants in 3 states, a trafficker in the stolen childhoods. My gut feeling, that cold knot of dread, had been horrifyingly accurate. My intervention had likely shielded countless children from his lens, from his darkness. Yet, as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving behind the raw awareness of the encounter, an uncontrollable tremor took hold of me. Nora held me close, her own tears tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. "You could have been killed," she whispered. But I wasn't. I managed, my voice thin but steady, and neither was anyone else. In the days that followed, a strange heroism was thrust upon me. News crews materialized. Thankful parents sought me out. but their praise felt hollow against the weight of what I carried, the indelible imprint of those images, the chilling knowledge of his actions, his intentions. I poured myself back into my work, driven by a renewed, almost frantic urgency. I argued for stricter laws, for better tools to hunt down those who preyed on the vulnerable. Sleep offered no refuge, haunted as it was by the struggle in the dirt, the fractured screen, the faces of children I couldn't reach. Healing was a slow crawl, aided by therapy and time. The darkness couldn't be unseen. The existence of such profound malice couldn't be unlearned. But I could channel it, transmute the horror into purpose. Years later, the 4th still draws me back to that park. I watch the children, listen to their unfettered joy, and feel a complex blend of warmth and watchfulness. Scanning the periphery for lone figures, for incongruous lenses, is an ingrained reflex now, but the fear has receded, replaced by quiet resolve. For every shadow, there are those willing to stand in the light to shield the fragile. That man, that encounter, taught me a brutal truth about the world's hidden dangers. But it also illuminated the quiet power of intuition, the necessity of acting despite fear. One person, one moment of courage can ripple outwards. As fireworks bloom against the twilight canvas, painting the sky in fleeting streaks of red, white, and blue, I silently reaffirm my vow to be that person, to find that courage, because true liberty isn't just celebration, it's the fierce protection of innocence. The 4th of July remains etched with ambivalence, a scar reminding me of terror, yes, but also of the unexpected strength found within, and the quiet heroism ordinary people can summon when the world needs it most. This telling is singular, etched into me. Not a whisper of it has passed my lips before now. It belongs to a sharp winter morning, back when my life unfolded on a modest acreage deep in the countryside. My ritual then was stark. Rise before the light, wrestle boots onto feet, shrug into a heavy coat, and step out into the biting air with my dog, Boone. An unremarkable rhythm, it seemed. The stillness pleased me, as did the sight of the moon, a pale coin suspended over the slumbering fields. But the events of that particular dawn irrevocably altered my perception of those nascent hours. I recall the air's crystalline bite, how my exhalations bloomed into fleeting nebulae before me as we navigated the property's edge. The sun remained hidden, leaving the sky a profound indigo, the shade that heralds daybreak. Underfoot, the earth was unyielding, frozen firm, carrying the scent of damp soil and the ghost of last night's dew. Boone padded faithfully alongside, his nose diligently mapping the ground, pausing intermittently, alert. He habitually trotted a few paces ahead, ears pricked, a furry sentinel on some unseen patrol. A profound silence reigned over the fields, broken only by the tentative chirps of birds stirring far off. We arrived at the dilapidated fence marking the boundary between our cleared land and a dense tangle of scrub and timber. Familiar territory. I'd slipped through its loose slats countless times to follow the slender track within. That pocket of woodland always felt intrinsically darker, the canopy thick, the undergrowth encroaching possessively from either side. Boone never hesitated, shouldering through the brush, leaving me to duck and weave beneath low-hanging limbs in his wake. My flashlight usually remained dormant. The path was imprinted on my memory. Yet, on this morning, impulse guided me toward a less traveled shortcut, a narrower artery promising a swift passage to an open meadow beyond the trees. The air here felt tangibly colder, heavier. Ahead, I could hear the distinct rustle of Boone's paws disturbing the leaf litter. Stillness absolute. No breeze stirred the branches, amplifying every minute crunch, every snapping twig. Then, abruptly, Boone froze, utterly motionless, hackles rising, ears like twin daggers aimed at the gloom. His tail went rigid. A knot tightened in my chest. I slowed, straining my ears against the silence. Nothing, not the faintest stir. My pulse quickened, a frantic drum against my ribs, though I tried to dismiss the unease. "What is it, fella?" I murmured, the sound swallowed by the quiet. No bark, no growl, just that unnerving, vigilant stillness. Hesitantly, I advanced a step, my gaze sweeping the impenetrable shadows. Too dark. Reluctantly, I thumbed the switch on my flashlight. Its beam sliced the darkness, illuminating the constricted trail ahead. Branches, leaves, clumps of tall, dormant grass, the usual tapestry. Then, a flicker of movement off to my left, low behind a cluster of dense bushes. A dark mass, hunched, indistinct. My first thought, feral dog, maybe even a coyote, though they were scarce hereabouts. A clear view remained elusive. Boone emitted a low, distressed whine, pressing his flank hard against my leg. My muscles coiled, adrenaline surging, amplifying the frantic rhythm in my chest. Slowly, cautiously, I shifted my weight, angling the light for a better perspective. The shape stirred. A swatch of black fur came into view, tangled, coarse, matted in places. Too substantial for any dog I knew, yet lacking the bulk of a bear. Perhaps a gaunt wolf, I reasoned, or some large stray roughed up by the wild. Then it turned. A face, or the semblance of one, emerged from the shadows. A definite snout, and two eyes that caught the flashlight's beam, reflecting a flat, jaundiced luminescence. My throat constricted. My mouth felt like dust. A tremor started in my knees. Boone's growl began then, a deep, guttural vibration I felt resonate up my leg. The creature remained fixed for a beat, seemingly assessing us, gauging the threat. Fear held me captive. I stood rooted, the flashlight trembling in my grip, my breath snagged somewhere in my throat. Questions swirled, frantic and useless. Wolf? Escaped exotic? Diseased? Before any coherent thought could fully form, it shifted again. With a fluid, unnervingly smooth motion, it elevated its upper body. It rose onto its hind legs. The movement wasn't awkward or tentative, it was practiced. It straightened, balancing easily, and stared directly at me. Speech failed me. Even blinking felt impossible. A glacial chill spread across my skin despite the exertion. My heart hammered with such violence I feared my ribs might splinter. Standing thus, the creature was tall, easily my own height. Its forelimbs dangled at its sides, unnaturally long. Its head canted slightly, as if striving for a clearer perception of me. The thudding of my own pulse filled my ears. The acrid taste of panic flooded my mouth from ragged, shallow breaths. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" Yet my limbs were stone. I could only stare, locked in that horrifying tableau. An eternity might have passed in those seconds, or perhaps only a moment. I was aware of Boone's panting, the soft scuff of his paws on the packed earth beside me. Then, without preamble, the creature pivoted and stepped deliberately into the dense thicket to our left. It remained upright, bipedal, parting branches with an almost casual ease as it vanished into the deeper woods. No grunt, no cry, just the receding rustle of disturbed foliage. It moved with swiftness, with an unsettling familiarity, like someone traversing a well-known route. The instant it disappeared, air rushed back into my lungs in a ragged gasp. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. My entire frame felt rigid, locked, yet my forehead was slick with cold sweat. Boone erupted in a volley of sharp, frantic barks that ricocheted through the trees. The sound jolted me from my stupor. I fumbled, my hand seizing his collar, fingers clumsy with tremors that nearly sent the flashlight tumbling. Get out. Back to the house. Now. A sickening hollowness persisted in my gut. My feet obeyed, leaden at first, then quickening. I turned, half-dragging Boone, who continued his frantic alarms until a gentle tug urged silence. The last thing I wanted was to draw its attention again. My mind relentlessly replayed the sequence: the matted fur, the unsettling form, the ghastly ascent to 2 legs. Each mental image sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through me. I forced myself not to scan the trees, fighting the certainty that it watched from behind every trunk, poised. My chest felt constricted, my breathing shallow. Focus on the path, I commanded myself, just the path. The return journey felt interminable. The woods somehow darker, more claustrophobic. The flashlight beam seemed feeble, diluted, though I knew it was only fear clouding my perception. Boone eventually fell silent, but remained plastered to my side, casting nervous glances into the surrounding gloom, tail tucked low. I resisted the urge to sprint, reasoning that a steady pace was safer, less likely to induce panic or a fall. Inside, however, a primal need to flee clawed at me. Finally, through the latticework of branches, the silhouette of the fence emerged. Relief washed over me, potent and immediate. The familiar, weathered boards seemed a bastion. I hurried to the loose plank, shoved it aside, and scrambled through. Boone needed no encouragement. Following close, tail still clamped low. The open fields on our side felt exponentially safer. Fewer trees, the distant outline of the house visible against the lightening sky, now a washed-out gray. Sunrise was imminent. Soon the morning might feign normalcy. But the crawl of fear on my skin was relentless. I strode quickly, casting frequent glances over my shoulder. Nothing but crows lifting from a far fence post disturbed the scene. The air, thick with the smell of wet grass, clung damply to my jacket. My body still vibrated with residual tremors, making a steady gait difficult. Boone remained quiet, panting softly, his vigilance unwavering. Reaching the house, I fumble with the keys, my shaking hands betraying me, requiring several attempts before the lock yielded. The door swung open. I stumbled inside the familiar quiet. Slamming it shut, I threw the deadbolt and sagged against the wood, breath coming in short, sharp bursts, skin clammy. Boone stayed near, gazing up, ears still flattened. I knelt, burying my hand in his fur, seeking and offering comfort, trying to coax my own heart from its frantic race. I remained there for several minutes, the silence amplifying my ragged breathing, trying to marshal my thoughts. Call someone? The sheriff? Wildlife services? What conceivable report could I make? Saw a large, furry thing that stood up like a man? Disbelief, perhaps ridicule, felt inevitable. Maybe a perfunctory search, maybe nothing. Explaining it without sounding unhinged seemed impossible. My mouth was parched, my throat raw. Exhaustion settled deep in my bones. Rising stiffly, I shed my boots and moved to the kitchen. Water, gulped greedily, did little to quell the internal chaos. My mind looped relentlessly on the creature rising, the glint in its eyes meeting the light. Each recall sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Another deep breath. Leaning against the counter, I forced myself toward calm. A trick of the light? A deformed animal? Had fear magnified its height? Yet, the visceral certainty of what I'd witnessed, its profound unnaturalness, refused to yield. Methodically, I went through the house, checking every window, securing every lock, an absurdity in the burgeoning daylight. I drew the blinds, craving insulation from the outside world, from the lingering sense that unseen eyes might still be watching. Boone shadowed my movements, a furry barometer of my own unease. Once secured, I retreated to the living room couch. Boone pressed close and simply stared at the wall, adrift. Eventually, sunlight pierced the gaps in the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. The house felt marginally less charged. I risked a peek outside. The fields lay serene under a clear sky, the horizon touched with gold. Ordinarily, I cherished this light. That day, it felt alien, insufficient. My eyes kept scanning the tall grass, half expecting to see that dark silhouette moving within it. Hours passed in this state, replaying the encounter, dissecting it. A part of me, the ingrained curiosity of someone intimate with the land, urged me back to the woods, to search for tracks, for tangible proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Yet, a stronger, colder part recoiled, terrified of finding confirmation, terrified of another encounter. I attempted normalcy, fed Boone, attended to rudimentary chores around the property, but my focus was fractured. Every unexpected sound, the skitter of leaves, a distant dog's bark, drew a flinch, a tensing of muscles. Boone mirrored my disquiet, sticking close, foregoing his usual exploratory rambles, ears perpetually half-cocked. The thought of confiding in a neighbor surfaced, then submerged. Had anyone else witnessed anomalies in the pre-dawn hours? The impulse warred with the fear of judgment, of being branded the local eccentric with tales of monsters. Around here, strange sightings often became folksy anecdotes, easily dismissed. I wasn't ready for that dismissal, nor for the potential scrutiny. It felt like a secret too raw, too personal to expose. Days bled into weeks. Routine reasserted its comforting, if fragile, hold. Boone and I resumed our walks, but never via that shortcut, never again before the sun had fully risen. We kept to the open spaces. I feigned equilibrium, yet remained hyper-aware, tensing at any flicker of movement on the periphery, freezing at any unfamiliar nocturnal cry drifting on the wind. The creature never reappeared. Sometimes, gazing at the dark, unbroken line of trees rimming the horizon, I wonder if it resides there still, observing, or perhaps it merely passed through. I no longer venture into the dense brush alone, especially not in the twilight hours, and the story remains untold, locked away. I lack even a name for what I saw. Time has passed since that frigid morning, yet the memory remains crystalline. The texture of that tangled fur, the fluid horror of its ascent, the unnerving intensity in those reflected eyes. It bore no resemblance to any natural beast. There was an otherness to it, a disturbing hint of sentience, perhaps. Such thoughts remain internal. I manage the memory by refusing to dwell on its implications. That is the entirety of it. I have never revisited that precise spot within the woods. No neighbor has heard this account, nor will they. Mostly, I succeed in pushing it down, but occasionally, in the vulnerable stillness of early morning, suspended between sleep and waking, the image surfaces. Tall, dark, bipedal, utterly incongruous in the heart of the familiar wild. And the fear returns, sharp and visceral, a potent reminder that the known world might possess shadowed corners, harboring things that defy easy categorization. I profess no understanding of what it was. I know only what I saw, and that knowledge is sufficient reason to glance over my shoulder whenever I walk out before the dawn. Through the sepulchral hush of Blackwood Asylum's forsaken north wing, a scream tore itself free, a sound so raw it snagged like ice shards in my marrow. I halted, the cone of my torchlight quivering across a corridor webbed with decay. Night duty offered its usual unsettling symphony, the murmurs, the sudden cries, but this pierced through the familiar dread. This was an anomaly, and pursuing it, I now understand, was my first step into a labyrinth far darker than any shadowed hallway. 3 years I'd walked these floors as Ilara, night nurse. Thought I'd cataloged every shade of human fragility Blackwood held. The night shift, typically a slow waltz of vital checks and whispered reassurances. Yet, lately, whispers circulated amongst the staff like spores. Tales from the sealed north wing. Phantoms glimpsed in peripheral vision, inexplicable noises rattling the silence, diagnostic machines sputtering to life unaided. Administration waved dismissive hands, murmuring of old foundations groaning, of minds too easily spooked. But standing there, pulse a frantic drum against my ribs, the scream still echoing in the architecture of my bones, I knew better. This wasn't imagination's phantom limb. It sounded again, fainter, yet undeniably human, drawn thin by distance. It emanated from the north wing, padlocked months prior for a renovation that never commenced. Protocol dictated I summon security, raise the alarm. Instead, an invisible current pulled me forward. Perhaps professional obligation twisted into something reckless. Perhaps simple, stark compulsion. My feet carried me towards the heavy, forbidden door barring entry to the forgotten ward. Groaning hinges protested as I forced the barrier inward. Air, thick and stagnant, exhaled the scent of time itself. Dust, mildew, a faint chemical ghost. My torch beam sliced through the gloom, illuminating peeling paint like sunburnt skin and gurneys shrouded in white sheets resembling patient effigies. "Hello?" My voice, small and uncertain, absorbed by the waiting emptiness. "Is anyone in here?" Silence answered, profound and watchful. A hesitant step, the floorboards signed beneath my shoe. Another. Each noise felt amplified, a transgression against the wing's long slumber. Deeper, I ventured, the very atmosphere shifting, growing dense and chill despite the sealed windows. A phantom draft kissed my neck. My torch sputtered, the light thinning precariously. Damn batteries, I cursed inwardly. Just as retreat seemed the only sane option, I heard it. A low, ragged whimper drifting from a room further down the corridor. My heart hammered against my sternum. I crept towards the door, slightly ajar. Pushing it open inch by cautious inch, the rusted hinges screamed a metallic complaint. "Hello?" I whispered. "I'm a nurse. Let me help." Darkness clung to the room's corners, my failing light struggling to penetrate. Then, a flicker of movement. A shape huddled low against the far wall, vibrating with tremors. Slowly, deliberately, I advanced, hands held open, palms out. "It's all right," I murmured, pitching my voice low and calm. "You're safe. Can you tell me your name?" The figure stirred, lifting its head. A strangled gasp caught in my throat. A man, gaunt and spectral, his hair a tangled curtain, his beard wild and overgrown. His eyes, unnervingly wide and burning with a feverish light, scanned the room wildly before fixing on me. "Clara," he rasped, the name brittle with disuse. I froze, the sound foreign yet strangely resonant, sending a glacial tremor down my spine. "No," I answered softly. "My name is Elira. I work here. Who are you? How did you get in here?" He shook his head, a frantic negation. "No, no, you are Clara. She promised you'd return." Closer now, my thoughts scrambled. Delusion, clearly. But trapped? In this sealed place? For how long? "Who promised I'd return?" I asked, striving for therapeutic calm. "The doctor," he breathed, eyes darting towards the shadows as if expecting them to coalesce into form. "She said, 'Wait, and you'd come. But you didn't. Why didn't you come back, Clara?'" A cold dread began to coil in my gut. Something about his ravaged face sparked a flicker of recognition, buried deep. I sifted through memories, case files, and then it struck me. The vanished patient. 6 months prior, just before this wing was shuttered, a man had dissolved into thin air. Police searches yielded nothing. The assumption, escape, swallowed by the city streets. But he hadn't escaped. He'd been swallowed by Blackwood itself. "Silas?" I ventured, the name surfacing from the missing person bulletin. "Silas Vance?" His eyes widened, a spark igniting within their depths. "You remember." A manic grin stretched his lips. "I knew it, Clara. Knew you wouldn't abandon me." I inhaled deeply, anchoring myself. "Silas, I'm not Clara, but I am here to help. We need to get you out. You need medical attention." His fragile euphoria shattered. "No," he insisted, shaking his head violently. "Can't leave. She told me. Stay here. It isn't safe out there." "Who told you that, Silas?" I asked, a dreadful certainty crystallizing. "The doctor," he whispered again. "Dr. Moreau." My blood turned to ice water. Dr. Althea Moreau. She'd overseen this wing until its closure, retiring abruptly after Silas vanished. "Silas," I said, choosing my words with care, "Dr. Moreau doesn't work here anymore. She retired months ago. Whatever she told you, it's not safe for you here." He stared, confusion warring with ingrained fear. "But she visits every night, brings food, tells me stories about the dangers." Nausea rose in my throat. Had Moreau imprisoned him here, cultivated his delusion? Why, and how remained undetected? I extended my hand. Silas, please, come with me now. I promise I'll keep you safe." He hesitated, then his thin, icy fingers closed around mine, trembling violently. I helped him stand. He swayed, frail as a dry leaf. We reached the doorway, poised on the threshold of escape, when a voice, sharp and cold, sliced through the stale air behind us. "And just where do you imagine you're taking him?" I spun, heart seizing. Standing, cloaked in shadow, was Dr. Moreau, but not the composed professional I remembered. Her hair was a storm cloud, her eyes glittered with an unsettling intensity. Her lab coat, once immaculate, was stained and frayed. "Dr. Moreau," my voice trembled despite my resolve. "What is this? Why is Silas still here?" A laugh escaped her, high and brittle, scraping against the silence. "Oh, Alara, you wouldn't grasp it. None of you ever did. Silas, he perceives things, the truth of this fractured world. He understands the peril beyond these walls." Silas's grip tightened on my hand, his trembling escalating. Fear or anticipation I couldn't discern. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends now," I stated, forcing authority into my tone. "I'm taking Silas out. He needs proper care." Moreau's expression hardened into something flinty. "That, I'm afraid, is not an option," she said, her hand slipping into her coat pocket. A wicked gleam of polished steel caught the edge of my torchlight. A scalpel. "Silas belongs here, where he's shielded," she continued, her voice softening into a hypnotic cadence. "And now you've stumbled into his sanctuary. You'll have to remain as well. Don't fret. Understanding will come. You'll see the truth, just like Silas." She advanced, the scalpel held ready. Instinctively, I pulled Silas back. My mind, a frantic scramble for an exit, a solution. Then, salvation, unexpected as an answered prayer I hadn't known I'd uttered. Rhythmic footsteps echoing down the main corridor, the security guard on his rounds. "Help!" The scream ripped from my throat, bouncing off the decaying plaster. "In here! Help us!" Moreau's eyes flashed with panic. She lunged, but adrenaline lent me speed. I slammed the heavy door shut, bracing against it with every ounce of strength as she hammered furiously from the other side. Heavy boots pounded closer. Other voices joined the fray. Strong hands pulled Silas and me away from the door just as it splintered inward. The ensuing moments blurred. The swift restraint of Dr. Moreau, paramedics murmuring over Silas, uniformed officers asking clipped questions. I moved through it numbly, adrift. As they gently guided Silas away, his gaze found mine one last time. Fear still resided there, undeniably, but beneath it something else flickered. Nascent hope, perhaps, or the first fragile dawn of clarity breaking through the fog. What happens next remains uncertain. Investigations loom, reports must be filed, repercussions faced. Yet, sitting here now, recounting the night's events to the impassive faces of the law, I'm left with a chilling residue that clings tighter than the asylum's dust. Relief wars with a profound, lingering disquiet. For I've learned that the monsters aren't always confined to the padded cells. Sometimes they wear the coat of the healer, the mask of trust. And in a place like Blackwood, where sanity frays like old thread, the line separating guardian from ghoul is terrifyingly thin. "3:15. The numerals glowed starkly on the clock face, a precise moment carved into the pre-dawn stillness I'd been fruitlessly courting. Then, the digital silence shattered, pierced by the phone's insistent shriek, a sound that, unbeknownst to my sleep-drugged mind, heralded the unspooling of sanity, the overture to a months-long descent. My hand, clumsy with sleep inertia, scrabbled across the nightstand, fingers closing around the cool glass rectangle. The screen flared, illuminating the darkness with an anonymous string of digits. My thumb, poised instinctively over the red decline icon, hesitated. A current of inexplicable curiosity, perhaps dread, compelled me to accept. "Elias?" I mumbled, the name thick on my tongue. Only silence answered, profound and absolute, until a faint sound bled through, the soft, rhythmic cadence of breathing. "Hello?" I tried again, forcing clarity into my voice. "Who is calling?" The respiration continued, a slow, measured presence across the void, then ceased abruptly as the connection severed. An unease, cold and heavy, settled in my gut. A simple misdial, I rationalized. Nothing more than crossed wires in the night. But the following night, as the clock displayed its immutable 3:15, the phone sang its disruptive song once more. The same unknown number, the same pregnant silence, punctuated only by that disembodied breath. By the third night, anticipation coiled tight within me. I snatched the phone on the first ring, resolve hardening my tone. "Listen," I began, striving for irritation over fear. "I have no idea who you are or what game this is, but it stops now. It's the dead of night." A shift occurred on the other end. The breathing hitched, quickening into ragged gasps. Then, just before the line clicked dead, a whisper slithered into my ear, so faint it brushed against the threshold of hearing. "We perceive you." Sleep became a forgotten country that night. Reason insisted it was juvenile mischief, a prank stretched thin. Yet, and primal intuition screamed otherwise, a certainty that something deeply wrong had found my frequency. The nocturnal intrusions persisted, night upon night, anchored to that precise minute, 3:15 a.m. Always a new number, a phantom caller evading identification. Always the silence, the breathing. Blocking proved futile. New digits bloomed like ephemeral phantoms. I surrendered my number, obtained a fresh one, yet the calls found me again, impossibly. Eventually, I stopped answering. What purpose did it serve? Still, they arrived. My phone would ignite the darkness, vibrating against the nightstand, a silent, insistent summons before lapsing into voicemail. No message ever lingered. My life began to fray at the edges. Sleep deprivation gnawed at my focus, turning days into hazy corridors of anxiety. Work faltered. Connections with friends grew strained, attenuated by my growing obsession and withdrawal. Paranoia became my constant companion. I felt unseen eyes tracking my movements, phantom footsteps echoing my own. I sought help from the authorities, but faced with no tangible threats, no concrete proof beyond the phantom calls, their hands were tied. Officialdom offered shrugs and platitudes. Change your number again, perhaps a new device entirely. Empty gestures against an enemy I couldn't grasp. I plunged into the digital labyrinth myself, chasing the origins of the numbers, hours dissolving into fruitless searches that terminated in prepaid obscurities, burner accounts, impossible routing. Dead ends, every single one. Weeks bled into months. The calls subtly mutated. The breathing sometimes gave way to a tapestry of unsettling background noises, susurrations that danced just beyond comprehension, the scrape of unseen shoes on distant gravel. Once, chillingly, I heard my own voice, a thin, spectral echo, as if refracted across an immense distance. I began a vigil, forcing myself awake each night to meet the 3:15 appointment, needing to experience the call to somehow contain it. My entire existence warped, bending around those few seconds of silent communion with the unknown entity tethered to the other end. My employment ceased. The apartment became a sealed vessel. I draped the windows, convinced hostile eyes could pierce the glass. Friends attempted intervention, their concern bouncing off the walls of my self-imposed prison. How could I articulate this siege without sounding utterly fractured? Then a night arrived when the pattern deviated. 3:15 a.m. The call came. I answered, braced for the familiar silence or the disquieting breath. Instead, a voice spoke, synthesized and alien, yet chillingly clear. "Look outside." My heart seized, a painful clench in my chest. Tremors ran through my hands as I crept to the window, peeling back a sliver of the heavy curtain. Below, bathed in the sickly orange glow of a street lamp, stood a figure. Motionless, its head tilted upwards, directly towards my window. Even across the distance, in the inadequate light, I saw it, a phone pressed firmly against its ear. I let the curtain fall, stumbling backward, my own phone clattering against the floorboards. Impossible. A hallucination born of sleeplessness. It had to be. But the following night, the watcher returned. And the night after. Each time occupying a different patch of pavement, yet always present, always observing, always connected by that silent, spectral call. Sleep abandoned me entirely. My days became a blur of exhaustion and hypervigilance, every creak of the building, every distant siren jolting me. And every night at 3:15 a.m., I would answer the summons and witness the silent sentinel below. This grim ritual, I knew, was unsustainable. Something had to fracture. So, one night, propelled by a potent cocktail of desperation and sheer fatigue, I committed an act of profound foolishness. When 3:15 arrived and the figure materialized below, I descended. Down the stairs, out the front door, into the cool night air. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat threatening to burst through. As I approached, the figure remained utterly still, offering no reaction, no acknowledgement of my presence. It simply stood, phone clamped to its ear, watching me with eyes lost in the pooling shadows. "Who are you?" The words tore from my throat, ragged and trembling. "What is it you want?" Slowly, agonizingly, the figure lowered the phone. It spoke, and the voice seemed to emanate not from its throat, but from the concrete, the air, the marrow of my bones. "We are you." I blinked, adrift in confusion. "What? That means nothing." The figure glided a step forward, crossing the threshold into the lamplight. I saw its face then, my face, reflected as if in warped carnival glass, the planes familiar yet hideously distorted. "We are the echoes," it resonated. "Every iteration you might have become. The choices unchosen, the pathways diverged. We have been reaching." Denial surged. I shook my head, shuffling backward. "No, this isn't real. It's a nightmare. I'm asleep." The thing wearing my stolen features smiled. a dreadful, unnatural stretching of lips. "Oh, but this is acutely real, Elias, and contact having been established, the process can commence." "Commence what?" I choked out, dreading the answer. "The convergence," it stated. "It is time for the manifold us to unify. Time for our release." I turned. I ran, blindly, desperately, until lactic acid screamed in my muscles and my lungs felt shredded. I ran until the city blurred into streaks of light and shadow, until I collapsed, gasping, in an unfamiliar, refuse-strewn alleyway. And then, horrifyingly, I heard it. The unmistakable ringtone. My phone, clutched in a trembling hand, vibrated insistently. Unknown number. 3:15 a.m. With a fatalistic sense of inevitability, I answered. My own voice, twisted and plural, echoed back at me. "You cannot outrun yourself. We are you. We are everywhere you have been, everywhere you might have gone. And we are coming to claim our whole." The line went dead. Standing alone in the alien dark, I grasped the chilling truth. This nightmare hadn't reached its climax. It was merely the prologue. Now, every ring incites terror. Every reflection threatens to reveal that grotesque parody staring back. I don't know the end game. I don't know if escape from the selves I never was is even possible. I only know that when my phone rings at 3:15 a.m., a treacherous part of me still feels the pull to answer, because those terrifying calls, that silent breathing, that watching presence, they are the only constants left, the only things that feel real in the fractured reality my life has become. It arrived nestled within the inked pronouncements of the morning broadsheet, a diminutive square of folded paper dislodged by the vigorous shake Elias gave the finance pages. Like an errant moth, it drifted to the worn parquet floor. Unfurled, the message scrawled across it in a tight, almost arthritic script declared, "I know the geography of your slumber." A bark of dismissive laughter escaped him. Some acquaintance's clumsy attempt at unsettling humor. Surely, a crude welcome to the building he'd inhabited for a mere week. The air still sharp with the ghost of fresh paint amongst the half-emptied cartons. He crushed the paper, consigning it to the bin without a second thought before the day's demands swept him away. That evening, fatigue clinging to him like damp wool after the day's attrition, Elias found its successor. Affixed to the scarred wood of his apartment door with a strip of vulgar tape, it observed, "The crimson shade suits you." Ice water sluiced through his veins. The shirt draped across his shoulders was indeed crimson, chosen hours after the first missive had been discarded. His key trembled against the lock, the corridor suddenly vast and predatory. Inside, bolts slid home with exaggerated clicks, reinforced by the ludicrous but somehow necessary bulk of a dining chair wedged beneath the knob. Coincidence, he insisted, a desperate whisper against the rising tide of unease. Perhaps the note had lingered unseen, the shirt a cruel stroke of chance. But dawn brought a third, not outside, but within. Perched brazenly beside the coffee machine on the kitchen counter, it advised, "A prudent man secures his casements." A frantic tour confirmed every latch was firmly engaged, precisely as he'd left them. No splintered frame, no jimmy marks on the sill, no trace of ingress. Yet the note sat there, penned in that same constricted hand. It was then the cold tendrils of genuine fear took root. Someone was observing. Someone possessed of an uncanny ability to breach his locked domain undetected. An appeal to the constabulary yielded little more than weary platitudes and suggestions to invest in new tumblers. No overt threat, no fractured entry. Their hands, they insisted, were tied. Yet the silent communiques persisted. Sometimes flagrant, clinging to the bathroom looking-glass nudged beneath the door like a malevolent draft. Other times, insidious, secreted within the pages of a half-read novel, folded into the breast pocket of a jacket dormant for weeks. Their intimacy grew, burrowing under the skin. "Your nocturnal murmurs betray you," one confided. Another confessed, "I savor the sight of your morning repast. Such tranquility." Paranoia became his shadow, a constant, prickling awareness that turned every footfall in the hall, every creak of the building, into a potential harbinger. He became a cartographer of escape routes, a student of peripheral glances. A web of electronic eyes was spun, cameras bristling from cornices, their unblinking gaze sweeping every quadrant of his supposed sanctuary. Futile. The notes materialized as if by conjuration, leaving the digital sentinels blind and mocking. His existence frayed at the edges. Sleep offered no refuge, only a landscape of anxious dreams. Concentration fractured. His reflection showed a gaunt stranger, orbits bruised with exhaustion. Concerned voices of friends became distant static, deflected by a wall of shame and disbelief. How to articulate this invisible siege without sounding unhinged? Then came the night the violation became tangible. He returned to chaos, drawers disgorged, their contents strewn like entrails, books hurled from shelves, pictures hanging askew, mocking gravity. At the heart of the maelstrom, upon the coffee table, lay the inevitable note. "Nothing you possess is truly hidden from my sight." Hours were spent restoring a semblance of order, hands meticulously cataloging possessions. Nothing was stolen. It was a demonstration, a calculated display of power, proving his life could be overturned at the merest whim. The following day, Elias severed ties with his employment, the routines of normalcy now unbearable. Flight was the only remaining stratagem. Boxes began to accumulate, monuments to a life hastily dismantled. And then, sealed within a carton of crockery, he found it. "Distance offers no sanctuary. My pursuit is boundless." The fragile dam of his composure shattered. He crumpled amidst the cardboard and packing tape, overtaken by ragged, helpless sobs. Trapped, adrift. In the nadir of despair, he sought external counsel, contacting a private investigator, a Mr. Thorne whose reputation preceded him. Elias laid bare the chronicle of his haunting. The unsettling paper trail spread before him. Thorne listened, his expression hardening into professional gravity, fingers steepled, gaze sharp. "This is no capricious phantom," he pronounced, his voice low. "This adversary possesses an unnerving intimacy with your life, your habits, your very domicile. Access is key. Have you entertained the possibility, Mr. Arden, that the architect of this torment is someone within your trusted circle?" The thought, a venomous seed, had sprouted before, only to be weeded out as paranoid delusion. Now, spoken aloud by this grim professional, it took menacing root. A gallery of faces flickered. The building superintendent with his master keys, Silas, keeper of his emergency spare, even Clara, though the key had supposedly been returned post-separation. Thorne proposed a new layer of vigilance. Micro cameras, infinitesimal lenses secreted within the mundane fabric of the apartment, recording ceaselessly. It felt profoundly intrusive, yet desperation erodes such scruples. We deployed them, pinholes and smoke detectors disguised within faux screw heads. A week unfurled in tense silence. No notes manifested. A fragile tendril of hope began to unfurl within Elias's chest. Had the Watcher retreated? Then, deep in the heart of one suffocating night, his phone pulsed, an alert from Thorne's clandestine network. Hands slick with sweat, Elias summoned the live feed. The image swam in the murky chiaroscuro cast by a single nightlight. A shape detached itself from the shadows navigating his living room, swathed in dark fabric, gloved, visage lost in the cowl of a hood. Rooted by a primal terror, he observed as the phantom moved with eerie familiarity. It made directly for the mahogany bookshelf, selected a specific volume, a worn collection of verse, and deftly inserted a folded paper between its leaves. Then the figure pivoted. It stared directly into the unseen lens. A jolt, colder than any fear preceding it, shot through him. It knew. A gloved hand lifted in a slow, deliberate wave, a gesture of pure, contemptuous mockery. Then, turning with fluid grace, it melted back towards the entrance. The faint, final snick of the front door latch echoed in the charged silence. Sleep was an impossibility. Elias spent the remaining hours huddled in a bedroom corner, the cold weight of a chef's knife resting in his lap, every settling groan of the building a fresh assault on his nerves. Dawn arrived gray and unwelcome. With leaden steps and a stomach churning with dread, he approached the bookshelf. The note resided exactly as witnessed. A commendable effort with the surveillance, it read. Improvement is required. Thorne was summoned forthwith. He watched the footage, his usual composure fraying, replaced by a grim intensity. "This escalates things considerably, Mr. Arden," he murmured. "This isn't merely stalking. It's psychological warfare. A performance designed to underscore their impunity, their absolute access." The ensuing days were a blur of forensic scrutiny. We dissected the apartment's anatomy, searching for impossible points of ingress. Locks were replaced yet again, augmented by alarms of Byzantine complexity. Thorne even commissioned a sweep for clandestine listening devices or hidden transmitters. Nothing. Despite the newly fortified perimeter, the sensation of vulnerability intensified, gnawing at him. An elusive piece remained missing, a truth obscured, tantalizingly close yet utterly veiled. It surfaced from the depths of a sleepless fugue, late one interminable night. Thrashing amidst tangled sheets, wrestling with the phantom, the epiphany struck not as a gentle dawn, but as a brutal plunge into glacial water, snapping him upright, heart hammering against his ribs, air hitched in his throat. He knew. With fingers that felt disconnected from his own will, he fumbled for the phone, dialing Thorne. "Come now," he managed, the words strained. "Please, I believe, I understand." Thorne materialized within the hour, drawn and weary. Elias guided him not to the violated living space, but to the small study where he wrestled with words on paper. To the desk. From its depths he exhumed a pile of old journals, Within their covers resided years of accumulated thoughts, fledgling story concepts, nascent character portraits, midnight inspirations, all chronicled in a familiar, constricted, almost painful script. The exact calligraphy of the tormenting notes. Thorne frowned, bewildered. "Explain, Mr. Arden." A ragged breath. "The author," Elias stated, the words tasting like ash, "is me." He saw the incomprehension war with dawn and suspicion in Thorne's eyes. "I've been composing them, unconsciously, perhaps in sleep, perhaps adrift in some fractured state of mind. It accounts for everything: the lack of forced entry, the absence of any figure on the primary cameras, the intimate knowledge, the performance." Thorne regarded him, a long, searching silence stretching between them. Then a slow, almost reluctant nod. "Dissociative phenomena," he said quietly. "Extreme duress, past trauma, even certain pharmaceuticals can precipitate such episodes. It's documented." Elias collapsed into his desk chair, adrift in a disorienting sea of relief and self-directed horror. The phantom was exorcised, the riddle solved, yet the solution was perhaps more terrifying than the mystery itself. What other actions had his own hand committed beyond the veil of his awareness? The ensuing weeks blurred into a landscape of therapeutic consultations and clinical assessments. The insidious notes ceased their silent arrivals, yet the fear remained, internalized now, a chilling echo in the chambers of his own mind. Every recollection, every past decision became suspect, potentially tainted by the hidden actor within. Months have bled into one another. He is painstakingly reconstructing the edifice of his life, stone by fragile stone. But the unease persists, an unshakable conviction that some fragment of that fractured self remains detached, observant, patient. And occasionally, in the deepest hours of the night, the old compulsion surfaces, a furtive glance towards the bookshelf, a check beneath the door, plagued by the question, was the siege truly lifted, or has the game merely entered a more subtle, internal phase? A low groan echoed up from the cellar as the door swung inward, a sound that prickled the skin along my arms. 3 weeks we'd inhabited this house. 3 weeks I'd treated the subterranean depths like a sealed tomb, its musty breath held at bay. But Maeve's bright red ball had escaped her grasp, tumbling down the wooden steps with a series of diminishing thuds. Avoidance was no longer an option. A resigned sigh, a flick of the switch bathing the stairs in weak light, and I began the descent into shadow. And there, nestled in the foundation's cold embrace, was the impossibility. A doorway carved where solid wall should have stood. The Abernathy place on Elmwood Avenue, snagged for a price that felt like daylight robbery in this fevered market. It demanded renovation, certainly, a fact plain to see, but the opportunity was too potent to ignore. Clara, my wife, had been instantly smitten by the sprawling veranda that hugged the house's frame. Our daughter, Maeve, chattered endlessly about the sheer luxury of a bedroom entirely her own. For my part, simple contentment bloomed at the thought of anchoring ourselves, claiming this tangible slice of aspiration. Those initial weeks blurred into a frenzy of cardboard mountains, the fumes of fresh paint, the gradual taming of chaos into home. Absorbed in this domestic transformation, the house's subtle eccentricities barely registered, a patch of unnatural chill that drifted through the parlor, the electric lights that stuttered and dimmed without cause, faint scrabbling within the walls, easily dismissed as nocturnal rodents. Standing now in the cellar's damp cool, however, confronting that aberrant portal, dismissal felt like a fool's errand. The strangeness had solidified, taken shape. Ancient. It radiated an age far exceeding the surrounding structure. The timber, nearly black with time and grime, bore the scars of intricate, unfamiliar sigils etched deep into its grain. No knob, no modern latch, only a corroded iron ring, stark against the wood, served as passage. And its dimensions were peculiar. Stunted, barely reaching my chest, a door built for something less than a man. "Clara," my voice, projected upward, sounded thin in the cavernous space. "Could you come down here a moment?" Footfalls drummed on the floor above, then descended the basement stairs. "Arthur, did you locate Maeve's ball?" Her question died on her lips as her gaze followed mine, a sharp intake of breath. Good heavens. "You had no idea?" The question was rhetorical. Her expression screamed ignorance. She shook her head, pupils dilated. "It wasn't mentioned. Not on any paperwork, not during the walkthrough. Arthur, what is that?" My hand lifted, drawn towards the rough wood, yet an instinct, primal and insistent, arrested the motion. A visceral warning. Do not disturb. "Should we try it?" Clara's voice was hushed, a thread of sound in the stillness. Before words could form, Maeve's small voice drifted down from the landing. "Mama? Papa? Is my ball there?" Clara met my eyes, a silent, mutual understanding passing between us. "Later," I murmured. "We'll figure this out later." We ascended, pulling the cellar door shut with decisive finality. Yet the image remained imprinted behind my eyes. That dark wood, those symbols, the sheer wrongness of it. What secrets did it guard? And how had it remained hidden until now? Night fell, blanketing the house. Maeve slept soundly upstairs while Clara and I lingered at the kitchen table, untouched mugs of cold coffee standing sentinel between us. "We contact the agent tomorrow," Clara stated, her tone attempting normalcy. "Perhaps it's merely an access panel, an old coal delivery hatch." I offered a nod, a hollow gesture. Coal hatches aren't adorned with cryptic carvings. They don't emanate a palpable aura of foreboding. "Yes," I conceded. "Tomorrow morning." Sleep offered no refuge. My thoughts churned, circling back relentlessly to the cellar. Then, near the deepest hour of night, around 2, it began. A muted thump, succeeded by a dry, grating scrape. The origin was unmistakable. The basement. I bolted upright in bed, my pulse hammering against my ribs. Clara shifted beside me, murmuring, "Arthur, is something amiss?" "Hush," I breathed. "Just listen." Again, the noise echoed upwards, more pronounced this time. Thump. scrape, like dead weight being laboriously shifted. Clara's fingers dug into my arm. What could that be? My feet found the cool floorboards as I reached for the sturdy baseball bat propped in the corner. I need to see. "Arthur, don't," Clara begged, her voice tight with fear. "Shouldn't we call someone?" But the threshold was already crossed. "Likely just vermin," I lied, forcing bravado. "I won't be long." Stealthily, I navigated the staircase, each tread groaning a protest beneath my feet. The rhythmic scrape intensified as I neared the cellar entrance. My fingers trembled, closing around the doorknob. Below lay darkness, pierced only by slivers of moonlight penetrating the high, grimy windows. My hand scrabbled for the light pole, gaze fixed on the far wall, the place where it resided. A stuttering fluorescent tube ignited, throwing the cellar into stark relief, painting angular shadows. And the door, the impossible door, stood agape. Air hitched in my lungs. It hung open just enough to reveal a void, an absolute absence of light. The scraping noise, now sharp and insistent, issued directly from that impenetrable blackness. One hesitant step forward, then another. The bat felt like a child's toy in my slick palm. "Hello?" The word quavered, fragile in the oppressive silence. "Is anyone down here?" Instantly, the scraping ceased. Stillness descended, thick and watchful. And then, slicing through it, emanating from the void behind the small door, a sound that turned my marrow to ice. Laughter, high-pitched, unmistakably a child's giggle. I lurched back, the bat nearly slipping from my grasp. "Maeve?" The name escaped instinctively, though a cold certainty gripped me. It wasn't her. I'd seen her moments ago, lost in innocent slumber. The giggle echoed again, seeming to drift nearer, and then, materializing from the profound dark, a tiny, unnervingly pale hand curled around the door's edge. I turned and fled. A primal surge of terror propelled me upwards, taking the stairs in frantic bounds. The cellar door slammed shut behind me. I leaned heavily against it, lungs burning, heart thrashing like a trapped bird. Clara stood at the stairhead, her face a mask of white dread. "Arthur, what was it? What did you find?" Words failed me. A frantic shake of my head, a gesture urging her retreat. We checked Maeve's room, still sleeping, blessedly oblivious, before retreating to our own bedroom, wedging a chair beneath the knob. Sleep was a forgotten country. We sat rigidly on the edge of the mattress, startled by every settling sigh and groan of the old house around us. With the first tentative gray light of dawn, we placed the call. Miss Albright, the agent, arrived before noon, radiating professional calm. "I'm certain there's a simple explanation," she offered brightly as we guided her towards the cellar stairs. "Houses of this vintage are full of surprises." Her practiced smile dissolved the moment her eyes fell upon the anomaly in the foundation wall. "That," she faltered, color draining from her face, "that is new." We recounted the previous day's discovery, the nocturnal disturbance, the chilling encounter. She absorbed our narrative, her composure visibly eroding. Finally, drawing a shaky breath, she spoke. "There's something about this property I perhaps should have disclosed." She proceeded to unveil a shadowed history, absent from official documentation. Decades prior, a family resided here. Man, wife, young daughter. The child disappeared one afternoon, utterly vanished. Though the parents maintained she was abducted, whispers of culpability clung to them. Never formally accused, they nonetheless departed shortly after, fleeing the weight of communal suspicion. "But the door," Clara pressed. "How does that connect?" Ms. Albright shook her head, a gesture of helpless uncertainty. "I can't say for sure, only that unsettling occurrences have plagued this house ever since. Unexplained sounds, objects displaced, there have even been sightings." Her voice dwindled, her gaze drifting towards the small dark portal. "Of a little girl," I supplied quietly. She met my eyes and nodded. "My deepest apologies. We were under the impression, we'd hoped, the phenomena had ceased. It's been quite some time since the last reports." Silence settled heavily in the damp air. We contemplated the door, now shut tight, presenting a facade of mundane wood. A facade none of us believed. So, what's the next step? The question hung there, heavy with implication. Ms. Albright let out a long breath. "The decision rests with you. Naturally, we can relist the property immediately. Alternatively, Clara prompted. "You might attempt assistance," the agent offered, her voice low. "For the child. Perhaps her presence lingers because something remains unresolved, a need for peace." I glanced at Clara, witnessing the war in her expression. This structure held our aspirations, our future. Yet, could we inhabit this space, shadowed by such knowledge? Could we nurture Maeve under a roof haunted by the echo of a lost girl? Ultimately, we remained. A priest came, murmured blessings over the unsettling portal. We delved into brittle newspaper archives, seeking clues to a forgotten tragedy. We even endured a fruitless seance. Following these efforts, the overt disturbances seemed to recede. The nocturnal scraping ceased. The spectral hand did not reappear. Yet, occasionally, in the profound quiet of the night, a faint sound drifts up from below, the ghost of a child's laughter. I wrestle with our choice then, questioning if we truly offer solace to that lingering spirit, or merely placate ourselves with rituals, because the door endures. And there are times when routine tasks draw me to the cellar, tending the washing machine, inspecting the boiler, that I catch it from the corner of my eye. Unlatched, open just a fraction, as if waiting, as if extending an invitation, and a cold dread mixes with morbid curiosity, wondering what destiny awaits should I ever yield, should I ever dare to cross that threshold. It began subtly, a discordance 3 weeks after I'd first slid the key into Unit 247's lock. A carton marked Noel Ephemera in my own hand sat perhaps 5 centimeters adrift from its ordained position against the corrugated metal wall. An insignificant shift, yet I knew. My phone, a digital repository of my life's minutiae, held the proof. time-stamped photographs documenting the precise cartography of my stored existence. 3 times I consulted the image. Unmistakably, some unseen hand had interfered. I lingered there in the passageway of secure haven storage, the key still clutched, the air thick with the scent of cured concrete and decaying paper fibers. Unit 247 huddled at the terminus of a corridor lined with identical, faded tangerine doors. Sequestered in a recess, the vigilant eyes of the security cameras conspicuously overlooked. A fact Mr. Henderson, the facility overseer, had candidly disclosed, the flaw justifying the modest reduction in rent. Clara, my estranged partner, had deemed the entire venture an exercise in folly following our separation. "Liquidate it, Elias," she'd urged, her voice crisp with practicality. "A clean slate." But 12 years weren't so easily erased, their material ghosts demanding sanctuary. Hence, this 10 by 10 concrete oubliette, costing me $90 monthly, became the reliquary for albums thick with faded smiles, furniture bearing the imprint of lives lived, and cartons brimming with curated memories. With a protest and screech of metal on metal, I hoisted the roller door. Initial impressions were deceptive. The familiar ziggurat of moving boxes tiered against the far wall, the venerable leather armchair bequeathed by my grandfather, the translucent bins harboring off-season apparel. Then the discrepancy registered anew. The Noel carton, undeniably displaced. More unsettling still, the fine patina of dust coating the nearby surfaces bore faint, linear disturbances, ethereal trails left by questing fingers. My phone emerged again, its screen splitting to display the past alongside the present. A clammy film slicked my palms. This wasn't delusion. Reality had been subtly rearranged. Secure Haven boasted technological safeguards, keypad gates, monitored entrances. Entry required a code, passage into the building another. Yet, within these echoing halls, anonymity reigned. I'd observed fellow tenants, fleeting figures navigating the labyrinth. Could one have mistaken their number, fumbled with my lock? Inspection revealed no scratches, no evidence of force. A meticulous inventory followed. Nothing absent, merely adjusted. The dust, a silent witness, confirmed the intrusion. The very air felt borrowed, exhaled by another occupant. Logic dictated contacting the authorities, or, at minimum, alerting Henderson. But the words caught in my throat. "Excuse me, my Christmas box migrated 5 centimeters." Accusations of instability, already levied by Clara amidst the wreckage of our life and my recent redundancy, seemed inevitable. Perhaps they were right. So I embraced a different kind of logic. The clandestine purchase of a motion-triggered camera, nestled discreetly behind a stack of linens, its unblinking eye fixed upon the threshold. Its battery promised a fortnight's vigilance. If shadows stirred, I would capture them. 7 days elapsed. Daily, I scrutinized the camera's digital chronicle, an unblemished record of stillness. The boxes remained immutable monuments. The dust lay in serene, undisturbed drifts. The insidious thought took root. Perhaps I had conjured the anomaly from the ether of my own fractured state. Then, during a routine visit to retrieve warmer garments, I discovered it. Squeezed between 2 cartons of dormant kitchenware lay a notebook. Plain, black, unadorned, the sort procured from any chain pharmacy. No inscription marked its cover. It was utterly alien. A tremor ran through my hands as I parted its pages. The inaugural entry bore a date 14 months prior, March 15th, 2023. Unit 247 feels wrong. Boxes I stacked deep are now a meter from the wall. Management assures me sole access. Locks untouched. Am I losing my mind? The notebook nearly slipped from my grasp. 14 months vanished. Another soul had occupied this space. Another soul had perceived the same subtle shifts. Sinking into my grandfather's leather chair, the worn hide sign beneath me, I read on. March 22nd, 2023. Further migrations. Plastic tubs swapped sides, left for right. Installed a camera. Footage is blank, empty frames bracketing the changes. The space itself feels wrong, dense, expectant, as if waiting for my departure to resume its secret life. April 3rd, 2023. Footprints in the dust. Diminutive, maybe feminine or a child's. They traced a path from the door, terminating abruptly mid-floor, dissolving into the concrete. Photographed them, but the images later showed only smooth dust. Vanished evidence. April 15th, 2023. Whispers now. Not coherent words, but the acoustic residue of speech. Echoes lingering long after utterance. Asked Henderson about deaths here. He denied it, but his gaze faltered. April 30th, 2023. A touch today. Reaching high, felt the brush of fingers, icy cold against my nape. Spun around, empty space, door secure. I'm emptying this unit tomorrow. $90 isn't worth this creepin' dread. May 1st, 2023. Tried vacating today. Inexplicable resistance. No box would cross the threshold. Inside, they were manageable. At the doorway, they gained impossible mass, leaden, immovable, as if welded to the spot. Even empty cartons refused passage. What is happening? May the 2nd, 2023. The whispers coalesce. They murmur my name. Fragments of sentences surface about staying, never leaving, writing this within 247. A peculiar inertia binds me. My legs refuse the command to exit. The atmosphere is crushing. This must be the final record. If found, avoid Unit 247. Do not rent. The script fractured mid-word. Subsequent pages remained starkly blank. Later inquiries with Henderson yielded nothing. Official records showed Unit 247 unoccupied for over a year preceding my tenancy. Prudence screamed for retreat, for immediate evacuation, for severing all ties with this concrete anomaly, yet I remained. Was it morbid fascination, or some nascent, unnamed compulsion drawing me back? My visits grew frequent, shifting from weekly obligation to near-daily pilgrimage. More sophisticated cameras joined the first. Infrared eyes, sensitive motion detectors. I became an archivist of the unsettling, charting every object, documenting each infinitesimal shift with photographs and measurements. Something resided within Unit 247, and its nature, I vowed, would be unveiled. The phenomena evolved. Initially subtle. A carton nudged rightward, a garment slithering from its hanger. Dust patterns define logic. They escalated in audacity. One morning, every box had pivoted precisely 90 degrees counterclockwise. The following week witnessed a complete spatial inversion, each item mirroring its counterpart across an invisible axis. The cameras offered only electronic snow, punctuated by inexplicable bursts of interference. Then came the susurrus. 3 days passed, I first registered it, a peripheral murmur like conversation bleeding through drywall, indistinct syllables that dissolved upon direct attention. Yesterday, the footprints materialized, small, delicate impressions mirroring the journal's account, leading from doorway to vanishing point. My photographs captured them, only to have them later dissolve into uniform dust on the screen, phantom evidence mocking my senses. Now I occupy my grandfather's chair, chronicling this descent. The air possesses a tangible viscosity, resisting movement. The whispers intensify, shedding their ambiguity. Words detach themselves from the murmur, invitations to stay, assurances of perpetual sanctuary. My name, repeated like a mantra, a profound heaviness settles in my limbs. Moments ago, an attempt to rise proved futile. Muscles ignored volition. Unit 247's open doorway shimmers, warped, viewed through some distorting medium. Clarity emerges from the whispers. They speak my name, Elias. They promise solace, an end to the echoes of Clara's departure, the anxieties of unemployment, the gnawing solitude. Remain here, they croon, within 247 forever. My hand trembles, the pen gaining weight with every inscribed character. The air compresses, dense as poured cement. Lifting my arm requires immense effort. Should this journal fall into other hands, heed this. Shun Unit 247. Do not approach its door. Do not. 3 days hence, Mr. Henderson discovered the unit vacant. Rent paid, yet the tenant, Elias, had evaporated, abandoning furniture, boxes, photographs, a life's inventory left behind. Peculiarly, every item hugged the perimeter walls, defining an empty central space as if marking where someone had recently been seated. The contents were cleared, disposed of. Unit 247 rejoined the rental listings, now offered at a tempting $79.99 monthly. A genuine steal, Henderson might remark. Ideal for someone navigating difficulties, needing to archive some memories. The cameras functioned perfectly, after all, the keypad system robust. What conceivable harm could there be? Unit 247 awaits. Its atmosphere remains pungent with concrete dust and the ghost of old cardboard, and occasionally, in the profound quiet, one might detect a faint whispering. Likely just the ventilation, of course. Probably. Henderson will offer favorable terms should you sign today. Pay no mind to the dust's strange configurations, or the fleeting impressions underfoot, or the peculiar tendency of boxes to subtly realign when unobserved. Only $79.99 a month. Such a bargain for a 10x10 parcel of eternity. Just disregard any unfamiliar black notebooks you might uncover, and under no circumstances should you begin to write within them. The whispers grow louder now. They recognize your name. They have anticipated your arrival. Unit 247 is prepared for its succeeding occupant. Are you prepared for Unit 247?